So for this section, we're going to talk about use one trigonometric value to find others in terms of the unit circle. So tying back to 4.3b, we covered the definition of each of the 6 trigonometric functions on the unit circle. So now, in that video we were given a point, but over here we are given a trig value using that information to find all the other trig values. So start off with our first example. Tangent theta equals 5/12. Now, following the definition, tan theta is y over x. So therefore, since tan theta is 5/12, y is 5 and x is 12. So we know that for sure. But that does not give us the complete information. Over here, it tells us that sine theta is less than 0. So since sine theta is less than 0, it means that it's negative. So let's go to the definition of sine theta, where the definition is y over r. Now, if sine theta is supposed to be negative, there's one thing we always know. If this is supposed to be negative, that means it needs to be a negative y over r. So what I mentioned before, the one thing we always know, r is always positive. R is always positive. So if r is positive, that means it's going to be a negative y. So therefore, it's going to be, since we have y equals 5, it's going to be y equal negative 5. So how did I go from negative 5 to y equals negative 5? So basically, if I have y is 5, so negative y equals to 5 divided by negative 1, therefore y is negative 5. Alright, so that's another piece of information we just figured out, that therefore y is negative 5. But here's the thing, we gotta go back to tangent theta, where it's y over x, but the value of it was a positive 5/12. So what does that mean? So since y is negative 5, if I kept as 12, it would have been negative 5/12. But the original, it's a positive. So we cannot just leave this alone. So if we want this to be positive, then I gotta think, negative divided by positive would be negative. But what happens if it's a negative divided by another negative? Would that come out positive? Which it is. So negative 5 and negative 12, when you simplify it, it will be a positive 5/12. So therefore, x is equal to negative 12. So we just figure out the x value and the y value. Now, you don't have to write all of this now, but you should know the process, understand the logic behind using these definitions, using the logic of positive and negatives, and then work backwards to find your true value for x and y. Now, I'm going to make room in order to find your r value, and then find all the other trig values besides tan. So again, x is negative 12, y is negative 5. Next, we're going to find the r value. x is negative 12 and y is negative 5. Now, as we do the work for the r, which is negative 12 squared plus negative 5 squared, all inside the square root. Now see how I put the parentheses because we have negative, just in case. So negative 12 squared, that's going to be 144, plus negative 5 squared, that would be 25, all inside the square root. And then 144 plus 25, that's going to be 169 inside the square root. The square root of 169 is 13. So r is 13. So again, I use the true value of x, the true value of y, plug it in, did the square of both, combine them, then square root the total, which was 169, and it equal to 13. So I'm going to make more room. Alright, so we got our x value, we got our true x value, we got our true y value, and we got our r value, which is 13. Now, since we already have 10, let's do sine. So sine theta is y over r. So y is negative 5 over r, which is 13. So negative 5 over 13. Next, we're going to do cosine. Cosine is x over r, so x is negative 12 over 13, so it's negative 12 over 13. Alright, we don't have to do tan because we're already given that. We're going to do cosecant. Cosecant is r over y, so 13 over our y value, which is negative 5, so it's negative 13 over 5. Then we're going to do secant. Alright, secant is r over x, so r is 13 over x, which is negative 12, so then it's negative 13 over 12. Lastly, we're going to do cotangent. Cotangent is x over y, so x is negative 12 on the top, and then y is negative 5 on the bottom. Negative 12 divided by negative 5, simply a positive 12 over 5. So we have our trig values, the other trig values. Sine is negative 5 over 13, cosine is negative 12 over 13, cosecant is negative 13 over 5, secant is negative 13 over 12, and then cotangent is positive 12 over 5. Now keep in mind that even though at the beginning we had negative in the numerator and in the denominator, since it's negative in one place in each of these trig value, I moved the negative to the front of the fraction. So be mindful of that. In our second example, we're now given secant theta equals square root of 3, while tangent theta is less than 0, meaning that tangent theta is negative. Alright, so let's review back to secant theta definition on this unit circle. So, secant theta is r over x. So, if it's supposed to equal the square root of 3, and secant theta is a fraction, so basically, what divided by what to get secant theta? Or should I say, how would I change secant theta into a fraction? And all we would simply say is that just put it over 1. So So we have our values for r and for x, because now we got square root of 3 over 1 as a fraction. So that means that r is equal to square root of 3 and x is equal to 1. Now, there's something you have to be mindful also. Tangent theta is less than 0, so that means it's negative. So let's see, tangent theta is y over x. Since tangent theta is less than 0, meaning it's negative, that means it's going to be a negative y over x. So if we go back to secant and it came out as a positive value, that means that r is positive. R is always positive, and if x is positive, positive 1, so a positive square root of 3 divided by a positive 1 will come out as a positive square root of 3. It is safe to say x is a positive 1. So if x is a positive 1, meaning x is a positive number, therefore y is negative. So that we know for sure. Y is negative. So how are we going to find the value of y? Well, we have our r value and we have our x value. So the only way we can find is using that formula for r. So what we're going to do, I'm going to write out the formula for r. Now the original was x squared plus y squared equal r squared. Now I'm not using the square root because we're not looking for r. We are looking for y. So we're going to use the original. So the original, we use this. So since we know our x value, we're going to plug it in. So 1 squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. So r is square root of 3. Now when we do the square of each, 1 squared is just 1 plus y squared equal, the square root of 3 squared will be 3. And then when I'm solving for y, I'm going to subtract 1. We're going to have y squared equals to 2. So y squared is going to equal to 2. Then to get y by itself, I'm going to square root each side, where we're going to get y equal to the square root of 2. Now, keep in mind, y is negative. So therefore, y is the negative of square root of 2. So even though we find the value of y, we have to be mindful. We cannot forget that y is supposed to be negative. So the true value of y is the negative of square root of 2. So once we establish the r value and the true x value, which is positive 1, next we establish using the piece of information tangent theta is less than 0. This is where we establish that y is negative. So now using the formula for r, which is x squared plus y squared equals r squared, I plug in the x value, I plug in the r value. When we square, we get y plus y squared, 1 plus y squared equals 3. Try to get y squared by itself, so we got y squared equals to 2. And then we square root both sides to get y, and then it equals to square root of 2. But you have to remember y is negative, so the value for y is negative, so therefore y equals in negative square root of 2. Next, I'm going to make some room, since we established the true x value for x, and a true y value, which is negative square root 2, and our r value. So, our true x value was a positive 1, our true y value was negative square root of 2, and our r value was the square root of 3. So, let's find sine. Sine theta. Now, sine theta was y over r. So, y on the top, so negative square root of 2 over r, which is square root of 3. Now, here's the situation. We have a radical in the denominator, so we gotta rationalize it. So, we're gonna multiply top and bottom by square root of 3. So when we do that, on the top, it's negative square root of 6. And then when we multiply, square root of 3 times square root of 3 will become square root of 9. And the square root of 9 is just simply 3. So we simplify to negative square root of 6 over 3. Alright, let's do cosine. Cosine is x over r, so 1 over square root of 3. And again, since we have a radical in the denominator, we have to rationalize it. So, multiply top by square root of 3, multiply bottom by square root of 3. So, what we're going to have on the top, 1 times square root of 3 is just square root of 3. Then on the bottom, in your denominator, square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9. And the square root of 9 is just 3. So that's all we have, square root of 3 over 3. Next, let's do tangent. Tangent is y over x, so y is negative square root of 2 over 1, which will just simplify to negative square root of 2. Alright, now cosecant. Cosecant theta is r over y, so r is square root of 3 over our y value, which is negative square root of 2. Since we have a radical in the bottom and our denominator, we're going to rationalize it. So we're going to multiply top and bottom by square root of 2, and then we're going to have square root of 2 on the bottom too. Now keep in mind, I only multiply this by square root of 2, not negative square root of 2. Just leave the negative where it is. So when we rationalize it and multiply, on the top it will be square root of 6, and on the bottom, now square root of 2 times square root of 2 is square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2, but remember, we had a negative at the bottom. And then when we simplify it, it's just going to be negative square root of 6 over 2. Now we don't have to do secant because we already got that. So lastly, we're going to do cotangent. Cotangent is x over y, so x is 1, and then y is negative square root of 2. So I got to do the same thing again. I got to rationalize it because we have a radical in our denominator. So I'm going to multiply top by square root of 2 and bottom by square root of 2. Alright. Doing so, on the top it will be 1 times square root of 2 is square root of 2. And on the bottom, square root of 2 times square root of 2 will become square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is 2, but remember I have the negative there, so simplify, it's going to be negative square root of 2 over 2. So we have identified all 5 trig values, which sine is negative square root of 6 over 3, cosine is square root of 3 over 3, tangent is negative square root of 2, cosecant is negative square root of 6 over 2, and cotangent is negative square root of 2 over 2. So the one thing we have to be mindful is the negative sign. So be very careful with that. Don't forget it. If it's negative, make sure you carry it, and then if you didn't have to simplify, it stays negative.